What's going on, everybody? It's time for another monthly ranking slash movie recommendation video. I've watched 23 movies that were horror this month, and I'm going to rank them from my least favorite to most favorite and talk about them briefly. Some of these I already have reviews for, so you can check those out. I'll let you know which ones I have reviews for when I get to them. And I just started my Return of the Living Dead franchise review series, so check out those as well. I only got one up so far, but yeah, check out my Return of the Living Dead review. Anyways, let's quickly get through this. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about each movie because there's 23 to talk about. So let's talk about number 23. What was my least favorite this month? I didn't hate any of these, but some were way too cheesy or way too dumb for my taste. And number 23 was Maximum Overdrive. This movie is just insane. And I wish it was more entertaining in the middle because the opening was interesting. It was funny. You got Stephen King being told he's an asshole or something by the ATM machine. You got AC/DC doing the soundtrack. And then there's even an AC/DC like van, and it was like, is that supposed to be them? Like, you got kids getting killed, and that was cool. But then the movie just goes downhill once they all get to this, bar, whatever that place was. You got Charlie Sheen's brother, I think. Some of the characters were just so annoying. There was like this high pitched voice lady who I think was a chick from The Simpsons or something. It wasn't fun. It should have been way more of a blast. I mean, this story is so insane, and unfortunately, it just did not work for me. Number 22 will go to Scream and Scream Again. This is a 1970 flick with Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. The story was not really that interesting. It was a little hard to follow, and there's this guy who has like a touch of death. He puts his hand on you, you die, and it has like this 10-minute like action chase sequence that just went on for way too long. It's got a cool poster, I'll give it that. And all the cops in this movie don't have guns for some reason. Is it like the UK? They don't have guns there. I mean, their problems would have been solved a lot quicker if they had weapons. And yeah, it was just kind of a drag. So not my cup of tea at all. It was very long and never gonna watch it again. So and the music was awful too. There's the soundtrack, the main song that's actually named after the movie. It was annoying as fuck. So Scream and Scream Again, this is where you're gonna stay. 22. Number 21 will go to a slasher from the early 80s called The Final Terror. This was the start of Daryl Hannah and the actor named Joe Pantoliano, something like that. He was in The Matrix, the Bad Boys movies. And this one has a female slasher who's basically Rambo. She's out in the woods and she's taking them out one by one. Not a high body count, not much gore to it. Some bad acting, some bad cinematography. The lighting in this movie is pretty piss poor. You got some day for night shooting. And I love how when there's kills going on, everyone just keeps lighting joints like nothing's going on. Like they know people are dying, but they just keep fooling around, lighting joints. There's a lame twist that you see coming a mile away. So The Final Terror was not that great. It's a very forgettable slasher, so I can see why it's not a cult classic. No one ever talks about it, and there's a reason, because it's just not that good. Not the worst thing I've ever seen, but ultimately just a waste of time. There's better slashers to watch, and this isn't one of them. Next up is the Twilight Zone movie. This is an anthology from the mid 80s based on the Twilight Zone series from way before, and I had only seen the airplane segment as a kid, so this is one that I've technically seen before, but not all the way through. I, when rewatching this, nothing was familiar, just the whole demon on the airplane thing, and that was the best segment. Now, this movie is also famous for having a helicopter accident where the actor in this movie got his head chopped off by the helicopter blade. That's what I read, and even two illegally hired kids got killed, so there's a lot of controversy behind this movie, and all that stuff is way more interesting than the film itself. All the segments were not that great to me. You got the guy who gets thrown into, the Nazi era, and he gets thrown to this area where people are racist. Like he's being treated like a Jew in the 1930s, and he's getting treated like an African American, and that time like he's a racist, homophobic, this and that. Like he's an awful person, and so he's learning his lesson. Like to be more tolerant. And then you get this other segment where There's an airplane being attacked by a demon, and then you get another segment where there's this evil kid who can manipulate his surroundings and shit, which was done by Joe Dante. That one was kind of fun, a little silly and cartoonish, but it feels very Joe Dante. It's got some cool effects. And then you got the one by Steven Spielberg, which was the lamest one. It's the worst thing I've ever seen from Steven Spielberg. And that one also felt like a Steven Spielberg segment about old people wanting to be kids again. It just didn't feel like it fit in this movie. It was way too lighthearted, way too family friendly. It was not a horror segment at all. So it just did not fit. Take that one out. Number 19, we'll go to a movie I already reviewed, so I won't say much here, and that is the Polish slasher movie that came out to Netflix last month, and that is Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight. This is a typical generic slasher movie about mutant slashers in the woods taking out these young kids one by one in gory ways. The gore is great, everything else not so much. So yeah, there you go. I got a review, check that one out. And next up, we got a film called The Black Cat, not the one from the 1930s or the 40s, the 50s, not the other 6 movies that were called The Black Cat. I looked it up. There's like 20 films called The Black Cat. So I'm talking about the one in 1981 by Lucio Fulci. Interesting drinking game for this movie that you could play is drink every time you see a close-up shot of somebody's eyeballs. You will die from alcohol poisoning because there's 100+ shots of eyeballs. And the one guy's eyes look like they're yellow, like he's Billy from the Black Christmas remake. There's something going on with his eyes. Were they supposed to be yellow? I was not a fan of this one. It's not anywhere near my favorite Fulci film. I prefer like the New York Ripper, Don't Twist Your Duckling. This one was just not that fun or interesting. I was having a bit of a hard time following the story. It's just about a cat that it kills people, makes it look like accidents. This one chick gets lit on fire. You see her face like melting, and just the 80s effects was pretty cool there, but overall it's just not an entertaining flick for me. I don't see myself revisiting this one ever again. So The Black Cat is my number 18. Next up is a documentary type found footage movie called Savage Land. It has eerie photos, and that's really about it. Like I had slight intrigue in the first half, but then the second half I just lost any interest in the film. I feel like they reveal what's going on way too soon, and I don't want to spoil it here in case you want to watch it. It's free on Tubi, I think. But yeah, I just feel like that reveal was way too soon, and it's weird. Next up is a late 80s slasher. I think it's a Spanish flick, maybe, and it's called Edge of the Axe. This has a arrow transfer, and this transfer is pretty good. It looks like it came out today. There's a cool opening car wash kill. You don't get a lot of those. The Mask, not a fan of it. It's got a terrible twist reveal who's killing. That kind of put a sour taste in my mouth at the end of it. Like, what? No, that doesn't make sense. That's stupid. And it's got 2 actors from Pieces. And speaking of Pieces, this movie also has some kills like the opening of Pieces where you see the axe like bounce off of people. So that's pretty bad effects. Was not crazy about the gore effects in this movie, and the music was pretty terrible too. But overall, it's fine. It's got some good atmosphere, decent body count. Next up is a movie that probably could have been higher if I saw a good transfer, but unfortunately I did not, and that is Killer Workout. This, so far, is the worst transfer I've ever seen in my life. I can't explain it to you, but watch what I saw. It's pretty fucking bad. It is the worst thing. It makes VHS look like Blu-ray. Like, I don't remember VHSs looking this bad, but this was terrible. The screen had like lines going through it that were white, and like 1,000 of them. Sometimes you actually like weren't even able to see what was on the screen. It was fucking bad. I debated turning it off, but luckily the movie was so cheesy that I was having a decent time. The fight sequences in this movie were hilarious. The sound effects, the way they were punching each other, it was just a gut laugh. I enjoyed all that stuff. And the killer's weapon of choice in this movie is a little like pin. Like the type of thing that you would use to, put on a diaper back in the day. Like a diaper pin. how the hell do you kill anybody with that? That was just ridiculous. And then there's a hilarious tanning bed sequence in the opening, lots of nudity. This movie wastes way too much time on showing people dance and work out. Way too much screen time was wasted on that. And what I find so hilarious is that no matter how many people are dying left and right, the business at this place never seems to get affected by it at all. Like 10 people are dead and more people just keep coming in. It's like, what the fuck? And the ending could have been cool, but they decided to drop the ball. Bad writing, and yeah, so that's a shame. But corny as hell, okay, but a fucking awful transfer. Get me a good transfer, and maybe this movie could have been better. Coming up next is a classic that turned into a franchise that I've never seen any of the sequels of yet, and that is Pumpkinhead. This has Lance Henriksen, and this was the directorial debut, I think, of Stan Winston, who is a creature effects guy, effects wizard, and that's the biggest plus for this movie is the effects, the look of Pumpkinhead. I like the story behind Pumpkinhead, the whole lore, the mythology of him, how he works. He's like a revenge demon. Love that stuff. Is the execution good? No. Wasn't a fan of the look of this film either. The transfer wasn't that great. The kills were lame. With a creature like this and the strength that he has, they could have done a lot more with this creature. So that's the big letdown here. There was an actor from Slumber Party Massacre 2 in here, so that was cool. And so yeah, lackluster kills, the character writing not that great, and Lance, his performance was okay, but at some moments it started to feel like he was phoning it in. It wasn't that good. So yeah, but I love the atmosphere of the film. I love the creature effects, love the look of Pumpkinhead, all that stuff. But I just feel like the kills could have been better. Some of the writing could have been better. And so yeah, not the best, but not the worst. Number 13 is a movie that I already reviewed for a Patreon, and that is Kill Theory. This is a movie where people are forced to kill one another by a certain time or they will be killed. So kind of like a Belko experiment or Saw, mixed with that. It's a fine movie. So yeah, I don't want to say too much here. I've already talked about it. So go check out that review. Next up is a Cronenberg classic, and that is Scanners. This movie is famous for one of its opening scenes, and that is the head explosion. One of the best head explosions ever on film. It's a pretty interesting story. It's got, what's his face? Ironside, Michael Ironside. He was pretty cool in here. And the main actor in this movie, the good guy, he looked a lot like the main guy in Shivers, but I looked it up. That's not him, but he looks just like him. And that's another Cronenberg film. So yeah, this is more of a sci-fi movie, but I love the practical effects in here. I think they were done by Dick Smith, and he's the guy who did The Exorcist. So I love the whole end scene, and it's just a ridiculous movie, but I love it. It was pretty fun. So check out Scanners. Number 11 will be Cadaver. This is another movie I already reviewed. It's brand new 2020 Netflix film, so check out that review. I enjoyed it, obviously. That's why it's at number 11. Next up is going to be the 1960 Peeping Tom. This is a very old movie, so this isn't going to be for everybody. It paces like an older film, but I wasn't that bored with it. I like the killer's choice of weapon. His motivation didn't really make a whole lot of sense in the end, why he was doing what he was doing. I guess he was just brought up by a crazy dad who liked to film him all the time. But I love that he kills his victims as he's taping them with his tripod as like a knife at the end of it, which is something they pay tribute to in Halloween Resurrection. The main actor was pretty good. He's kind of sympathetic. I liked his character, liked his performance. I didn't like his love interest, though. I didn't like the way that was all written. It felt kind of forced to serve the story. But it's an okay movie. It's definitely a classic worth checking out at least once. So check out Peeping Tom. Number 9 is a Netflix movie called His House, about two immigrants that move to London. And when they get to their new shitty house, they start having paranormal occurrences. They start hearing things. They see things. And I already have a review for this movie, so check out that review to hear my thoughts. Next up is a Dario Argento flick called The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. I have no idea why it's called that. It's like one scene in the movie for like 10 seconds. I don't know why it's called that, but this is, I think, Argento's first movie. It's at least his first giallo slasher movie. And This one, like every movie after this that he does that's a giallo slasher, has a guy who sees something, but he can't remember what exactly he saw until later on. And he's like, oh, now I know. But I like that twist towards the end, who's the killer and why and whatnot. It's got a great score by Morricone. I can't say this guy's name. Ennio Morricone. I'm butchering it probably, but he's done all kinds of scores. The Thing, and this one doesn't have any gore or nudity, so it's not like Argento at all. In some of his later flicks, and this one, just like an Argento flick, has weird characters, but that's not a bad thing. I actually like these weird characters. The guy who like cooks and eats cats, that was a weird scene, and the guy with like the speech impediment in prison. And it's got, of course, unbelievable reactions and just weird scenes that just don't make sense that you wouldn't see in American cinema. But that's the charm of the flick, I guess. But yeah, cool twist, intriguing mystery, fun Argento flick. I would put it in maybe the middle of my ranking. Next up is a movie called Siren, and I think this was made based off of a short story, and I think it was in VHS. The whole girl from the club who ends up being like a demon, it was turned into this, I think. And it's a very grainy flick. It's got Chase Williams from Victor Crowley, and John dies at the end, I think. Haven't seen that movie, but I remember hearing he was in that. The CGI in this movie is not that good. The story is interesting. It's got like a strip club cult thing going on. It's very intriguing. You're like, what the hell's going on here? Um, the ending was not crazy about that. It just, yeah. I feel like that whole ending could have easily been avoided. I don't want to spoil too much, but yeah, that was just a lackluster ending for me. It's like, really? Come on. This movie could have used more gore, and I love the scene where the guy gets anal probed. That scene was just fun and hilarious. So yeah, it's got the racist guy from the Final Destination. So yeah, it's a very fun, silly ass strip club cult movie with a demon that anal probes people with her tail, and it's just a blast. So check out Siren. Next up is a silly infection story by Cronenberg called Rabid. This girl gets some kind of treatment that has a bad side effect. I enjoyed it. It was very fun, it's very silly, and it's got gratuitous nudity, a sphincter on her. It looks like an asshole on her armpit that she's like eating people with. I love all the over the top minor characters in the film too. It's like something that you would see in an Argento flick. Next up is a 2015 or 16 movie called Brimstone, written and directed by Martin Koolhoven. This movie has Guy Pearce and what's her face from The Cat in the Hat when she was a kid. I forget her name. Fanning? Is it Fanning? But yeah, we get to see a kid die in this movie, so I'm always a fan of that. You see a kid get shot right in the throat. This movie gets very brutal and dark at times. It's very dark. In fact, sometimes it's a little too hard to watch. It makes you upset. There's a shocking scene at church that I won't spoil. And yeah, it's a very depressing, dark tale. And it goes in places that are a little unsettling. So yeah, it's a very hard to watch movie, so brace yourself. But it's a very well paced 2.5 hour movie. Was never bored, was intrigued the whole time, wanted to see where it was going. But unfortunately, the ending was not cathartic enough for me. It was not that well of a payoff, but it's still a good movie. So that's why it's high up at number 5. Next up, we got the first movie, I believe, by Mario Bava. I could be wrong. And that is Blood and Black Lace. This is a giallo slasher. You got the leather glove wearing Invisible Man looking killer who has a shiny implement that he stabs people with. It's got cinematography that looks very Argento like at times with the blues and reds. Looks very colorful. Love the colors in this movie. And it's, of course, a whodunit, but I like that there's more than one killer. Spoiler. This is an old movie. It's very old. If you haven't seen it, I won't say who the killers are, but I love that there's more than one. All right, I'll spoil that. So that was pretty cool. And yeah, I like the pace of the movie. It's leisurely paced, but it's not that slow. It's not that fast either, but was never bored. And it's got a very Italian sounding soundtrack that I liked. And good atmosphere and very suspenseful. So yeah, I enjoyed this one way more than Bay of Blood. I was not that big on that one. But this one, much better. Blood and Black Lace, check it out. Next up is a movie called The Void by the director of Leprechaun Returns. This is a effects guy, and that's the big positive here. The effects in this movie, the creature effects, the way they look, it's amazing. It's jaw-dropping effects. I love the look of these things and the gore. It's just fantastic. The atmosphere of this hospital is eerie as hell and great as well. There's a couple of surprises in the film that I did not see coming. It's like a cult flick mixed with some supernatural stuff and kind of like a Hellraiser movie at times too. It's just such a blast. I can't recommend it highly enough. The ending is a bit of a head scratcher, kind of multiple viewings to understand. I didn't understand what was really going on, but I didn't care because of the aesthetic and the effects. It was just awesome. So check out The Void if you're an effects fan and you love to see practical effects, because there's no CGI in here. So check out The Void. Number 2 is a 2020 flick from Blumhouse that I already reviewed, and that is Freaky. I really enjoy this movie. The performances by the main two actors in this movie, Vince Vaughn, I forget the other chick's name, but they were great playing two different characters really in the same movie. And the gore, the kills in here were silly, over the top, but fun and brutal, creative. Love that. And it's just a fun flick from beginning to end. It's just probably one of my favorite horror comedies of this year. It's just a blast. So check out Freaky the moment you get an opportunity to, because it's worth it. Number 1 will go to The Neon Demon. Well, I'll say very quickly about this movie. I don't want to talk much longer because this video is getting too long already. I will say that this is a slow burn, artsy flick about the fashion industry. It's a commentary about the fashion industry, how cruel it is to be in it, about beauty and whatnot. It's got Keanu Reeves, who plays this smaller role, piece of shit, but it's cool to see him. And it's got the bad guy from Ghost Ship, and the whole movie is just stunning and visually striking. The cinematography is just amazing in this movie. It looks fantastic. Get the Blu-ray. It's amazing. So yeah, gruesome, cool ending too. So check out The Neon Demon. It's fantastic. And that is my ranking of the films that I watched in November. So there you go. What did you watch this last month that you love so much? What are some movies that I should check out? What are your favorite movies from this list? What are your least favorite? Let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here, you can hit this like button, really appreciate it, and become a Patreon for as little as $1 a month to request movie reviews, and become a subscriber today just by clicking on my cartoon face in about 5 seconds. And until next time, Auf Wiedersehen.